at our next panel here at LANFest, A Day in the Life of an Engineer. And we have some really fantastic panelists. I want to introduce myself. My name is Chris Allison. I have the privilege of serving on the board for LANFest. And LANFest is just an amazing place. And I'm sure you guys all know that, which is why you're here on the stream. And so I want to go through and kind of introduce or allow them to introduce themselves, some fantastic engineers from Intel. Chris, do you want to go ahead and kick us off and get us started?
Sure. I'm Chris Dalton. I work in Oregon within Intel. I work on SRAM and RFs. I also have been a part of LANFest for a good 6, 7 years now. I've actually been on the board a little bit as well, and that's me.
How about you, Manny?
Hi, I'm also in Oregon. I live in Portland. Been at Intel for about 5 years now. I'm a software engineer. I started off as an embedded engineer. Now I'm it's called deep learning software engineer. So I work in the machine learning space. It's really interesting. I've never been in LANFest. I was invited last year, but I didn't have time. Yeah.
Cool. And last and definitely not least, we have Regina.
Hello. So I work at Intel in the Santa Clara site, and I work on CPU architecture. And before that, I worked in the benchmarking team, also on CPUs, but also GPUs too. And I have had kind of an on and off relationship with LANFest. I was pretty active in the early days, and then I attended sometime in the middle, but we never had one in Santa Clara, so I've gone to the one in Folsom. I have kind of fallen out of it recently because I have kids now, and I barely have enough time to game on my own. But I'm really happy to be here.
That's cool. Well, I think that today's panel is going to be a lot of fun. These amazing individuals have a fantastic realm of experience, and one of the things that I want to make sure that we're able to do today is really dig into some topics that you guys, as viewers, are interested in. So I'd like it if you can go ahead and type in the Twitch chat, tell us a little bit about maybe who you are or what your main interest is in this panel, and we're going to kind of kick off into some things and talking about just some life experience and some stories from our panelists about being an engineer and what's kind of brought them to this point. And as we get towards the end and sort of throughout, we'll work in your questions. And really, we're here for you guys. So just let us know exactly what you're wanting us to talk about. So let's kind of kick it off uh, by rolling back to your guys' high school years, like thinking about way back in the day as you were young, budding, aspiring engineers. Tell us a little bit about your high school experience and how you kind of started down the path of becoming an engineer at Intel.
Who wants to
Anybody
go
can take
first?
Yeah.
I can go first. I'll go first. So I actually, when I was a freshman in high school, I thought I wanted to be a vet. And then I actually did some program for young aspiring vets. And then I realized that like, you have to deal with sick animals. So I was, it didn't really occur to me that you don't just get to play with animals all day, right? So I was just like, okay, I don't think I want to be around sick animals all the time. And so I swapped to my second interest, which was computers. And I was kind of a nerd in high school, and I ended up joining our yearbook team, which I found out had all the cool latest technology because we ended up doing our yearbook all digitally. This was back in 97 and 98, which is like, it was really like no one was doing this yet. So I got to play with cool new digital cameras and like, gosh, how fast was that PC? Or we used a Mac, I think, but it ran at like 100 megahertz or something, and I thought that was amazing. Um, and so I got this love of computing from there, and eventually, my dad also worked at Intel, and I decided I wanted to pursue this further.
Yeah, and for me, actually, I started, I guess, before high school. When I was 13, I built my first computer. That's basically where it all started and kicked off. It had a Pentium 3 in it. But yeah, I mean, when in high school, I was your typical, I guess, secretive nerd because I was a jock. I played football, but I also did all the computer science classes every freshman through my senior year. So I knew what was going on. I really was enjoying programming. And then when I went to college, I got my computer science degree. Yeah.
I guess for myself, I'm from a family of engineers. I joke about how my parents have their own little museum of old technology. So my dad even has like the punch cards that you use to program PCs with.
My
They
gosh,
have the
my dad
big,
has like a museum too.
yeah, they have the big magnetic things that used to write programs in or save stuff in. Um, Ever since high school, I went to a technical high school, so I did a bit of computing back then. Um, yeah, I always knew I wanted to be an engineer, so it was kind of set for me from the beginning. So
No, I know that we have some high schoolers that are watching right now. And Regina, when we were kind of prepping for this, you shared a little bit about your just kind of your high school experience from a social perspective, and then moving into college, and kind of that transition for you. Would you share maybe a little bit of that story of what that transition from like high school Regina to college Regina was like?
Oh, well, yeah, in high school, like I said, I was kind of a big nerd, right? And I took the computer science classes. No, I didn't play sports. I was like really into anime and video games and all of that stuff. And then I went to college, and it turns out I was actually really cool because everybody in college loved those things too, and so it was a really stark transition and really weird. Um, yeah, it was about going from a place that didn't appreciate those things as much. Like I don't think I was really bullied about it, but I never felt like I fit in. And then I went to college where everybody I met was into those things, and then I went from being nerdy to cool.
That's awesome. So there's hope for those of us that were nerds in high school. All right. So thinking about kind of your next step as you guys moved into college, obviously education is something that is probably a major question for specifically our students that are watching. So if you guys could each share a little bit about the education path that you took, and what that process was like, and sort of what that journey was like for you moving from the early days of education towards more of a professional role.
Sure. Yeah. So basically, I mean, I knew I wanted to, be an engineer. So depending on what course, load you wanted to take, I was looking more to computer science. So, I mean, a computer science, but you also could have gone computer engineering. It's pretty close to each other. But for me, it was computer science. And then you start going down that track, which is lots of math and some more math. And then your computer science classes, which actually are a lot of fun. But once you get closer towards the end of your degree, the something I did was one of the guys that I went to school with actually told me about Intel getting or having interns in Austin, and so that's what I applied for an internship, and then I ended up getting it, and that's basically what started my whole career is actually looking out for a company that I would want to work for and see what was what would progress from that, and then go from there.
Yeah. How about you, Manny?
well, I mostly, like I said, I come from a family of engineers, so I was mostly following my brother's steps. He's an electrical engineer. So we both did school back in Mexico. That's where we were raised. I was born in the U.S., but my family lives in Mexico, so that's where I attended school. It's also cheaper. um, yeah, so I did my engineering degree in Mexico. However, I did a 1 year in France, and that was really interesting. It was a big perspective difference between engineering in Mexico and engineering in France. So there, it's like you said, it's mostly math. It's math, 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 and then a little bit of computer engineering. In Mexico, it's mostly practical stuff. So you work in really long projects. You just code, 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 which is really fun. So I was able to get those two different perspectives for engineering. Um, Then I did a master's in England, and that was also very different. The school there is also really, really, really good. And they just have a different way of teaching you engineering, and just the way you approach things and do projects is very different. So I think it's really nice to get different perspectives, especially when you're learning. I think it's really good for an engineer to get that stuff.
Yeah. How about you, Regina?
Yeah, so since I also knew I wanted to go into engineering, I applied for engineering school. So I went to RPI, which is in upstate New York, and uh, I did both computer engineering and computer science because I like both hardware and software. Though I knew I really wanted to focus on hardware, but I felt like it was good to know the software side. Actually, what people use is the software on top of the hardware. So I did a dual degree. Um, I think my junior year of college, I actually also got an internship with Intel out in California. So I was able to come out to California for a summer. I actually didn't know or think it was going to turn into a full-time job, but it actually did. So then I moved out to California full-time after that. Yeah, it's also a lot of math, a lot of logic too, right? Like it's like, yeah, the math, there's a lot of math there, but if you're good at logic, like which I consider slightly different than math, then that will help you a lot too.
I don't think we're doing a good job of
Yeah, well,
getting kids into engineering. No, I agree. It's
math
a
is
lot of math, and
fun.
math is fun. Yeah, I agree. I agree. It's just when you hear math, you just like shivers, like PTSD for us.
Yeah. So, well, we've got an easy question that's come in. So, tell us about the types of games you guys like to play. I mean, do you guys only play math games? I'm assuming you play other types of games too.
I do like math games. Okay, since I started talking, I will start. Right now, I am playing a lot of Among Us, which I don't know if the rest of you guys are playing, but God, I'm like obsessed with that game. I like playing indie games. I love going through the Steam store, finding something that looks really weird, and playing that. I do play some of the more popular indie games too. I did like try Fall Guys. I didn't really like it that much. Um, but then I'm playing Cook Serve Delicious, which is an amazing game, and Oxygen Not Included, also an amazing game. I think I've dumped like 800 hours into just those two. And then I love competitive stuff, so I had a stint where I played PUBG like every day. So I I had to stop because it was taking over my life.
Yeah, when PUBG came out, I definitely could not put that game down. It was pretty good. It was pretty good. But recently, I mean, I guess as of 2 days ago, I started playing Star Wars Squadrons, and that's pretty actually entertaining. It brings back a lot of nostalgia from way back in the day. Um, but I usually stick to some RPGs, so I'm looking forward to Cyberpunk, like probably everybody else. I love the Assassin's Creed, so I'm also looking forward to the Valhalla one coming out pretty soon. Um, but yeah, I mean, I stick to RPGs. Age of Empires, you can't go wrong with that either.
I guess for me, my parents never really bought me a console because they said it was a waste of time. Eventually, I got them to buy me a PC, obviously for school reasons. And I managed to get into World of Warcraft. I did play quite a bit. And that was until I went to engineering school when you just basically don't have time for anything. It wasn't until recently because of COVID that I just had a lot of time to spare. So I bought a gaming PC, and I bought Call of Duty. So I've been playing a lot of Warzone. I've been playing a lot of multiplayer. I actually like multiplayer a bit better than Call of Duty. I play a lot of Among Us with my friends since we can't really see each other. I also have friends that live elsewhere. So it's nice to keep in touch and play Among Us and kill each other and then blame everyone else. So yeah.
That's cool. So does Intel, as far as a campus, have any like really cool stuff on campus when it comes to just culture and people think about some of the other major campuses like like Google and how cool Google's campus is. What is it like at Intel? I mean, I'm assuming you guys are probably mostly working from home these days, right?
Yeah, definitely working from home at this point.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, was there anything that was kind of cool about campus while you guys were still able to go in there?
Well, for me personally, I work at Runnel Acres, which is, connected to a big advanced fab. So a lot of the areas where I work are very industrial. Once you get closer to the fab, we do have a lot of cool amenities that we could, go play pool, or we have really big cafes. We have, the coffee shops. There's a lot of really interesting things you could do on campus, even in a campus like mine, which is more fab oriented.
I guess I work, well, I'm also in Oregon, but I work in a different fab where I'm sorry, different campus where we have no fabs. It's called Jones Farm. And this is mostly, I guess, an engineering campus. And we actually do have a game room. I think we have multiple game rooms, but obviously all the games and controllers are missing, so you can't really use it. We have also pool tables. I think we also have table tennis and foosball. That's fun. I never have time to use those. But we do have those amenities. It's really nice. It's really green, our campus. It's trees everywhere. I really like that. You can just have a stroll around the campus. It's nice. So yeah, it's a fun campus. We have fruits and everything that, yeah.
So we've got another question that says, is there a way I can be an engineer if I really suck at math?
I knew some engineers who were bad at math. Like math is important when you're learning the fundamentals, but you can still kind of get your way around it. Because like I don't know, whenever people tell me they're bad at math, I just feel like they've probably had a bad teacher, because math makes a lot of sense, right? Like it's like 1 plus 1 is always 2. It's not like when you when I was in English classes, you'd write like a paper about something, and one person would grade it one way and another person would grade it another way, and it's just like, I can't make sense of this, right? You have to try to write it for somebody's style. But math, it's always the same thing. It's always the same answer, right? And eventually somebody can explain it to you, I think. So it's maybe get a little bit of extra help or whatever, but you could still do the engineering.
To expand on that a little bit, I think the biggest takeaway from college you should really get is your problem solving skills. Learn how to solve a problem. That is the key thing for an engineer. That's basically what we do all day. How do I solve this?
Like also the problem is that they don't teach us that math is a tool. It's something that we have to use. There's no other way to prove to when you're having a discussion with other engineers or your manager. You need to show them data and you need to show them why something works. The best way to do it is through math. So I think it's a very powerful tool that engineers should learn to manage and to use in their advantage.
Yeah, so let's dig into a little bit of the daily life of an engineer. Tell us a little bit about what kind of the ebb and flow of of the daily cycle, especially when you're working on a project that might take a long period of time. What is what does the daily life look like? Like Regina, you stated you looked at being a vet and you realized you don't just play with puppies all day. So what are maybe some misconceptions, and just kind of like teach us a little bit about what that looks like for you guys?
Okay, so I will say that as you progress in your engineering career, you end up getting into more and more meetings, and you'll be in a lot of meetings. Well, especially at Intel. Intel loves meetings, right? But what you find out is it's not you just doing a thing by yourself. It's you have to work with others. In order to build something really awesome, you have to work with other people. And I think people think that if you're a programmer, you can just be a rock star programmer and just sit by yourself and just generate code. Like, you can, but if you are going to be truly effective, you need to learn how to work with other people. I guess if you want to ask about a day in my life, I don't work on one project, because I work in like kind of analysis of what's going on in the entirety of like the CPU space. And so I switch from project to project like constantly, even all day long. But I am in a lot of meetings. I do a lot of stuff with spreadsheets, and a lot of data analysis on my end. Which, funny enough, like a lot of the stuff I'm doing now relies on statistics, which I was actually bad at in math. So it's not even the part of math I was good at, but I do a lot of it now.
I would say a day in a life for me is first coffee, then some more coffee. But I actually do, what I like about my job is I get to code a lot. So like I said, I work in machine learning, and I'm in the team that basically writes all the algorithms for machine learning. We don't make up these algorithms, but we write them. I focus on CPU stuff, so I'm mostly coding. I really like that I'm able to code a lot. I do have meetings, mostly for just discussing with other engineers what's the best approach for something. We do work in a very independent team, so most of us will work on stuff for a week, maybe 2 weeks, sync up, and then work some more. I'm probably coding 60 or 70% of the time, and when I'm not coding, I'm probably looking at other people's code. So I really like that's why I've stayed in this team. It's because I really enjoy the kind of work I do, and I get to code and learn a lot. So something that's nice about Intel is that there's a lot of senior people that you can learn a lot from. So people that have worked in the industry for 20, maybe 30 years. That's really neat. It's a really good opportunity to grow.
I'll definitely start out with coffee, 100%. But since our team makes smaller level portions of the full CPU, I work with people all over the globe. I work with people in India, Penang, Russia, everywhere. So when I first get in, I actually have to collect all the data from all the sites that were working while we were sleeping. And then I have to run analysis on everything they did and then sync it up to where our people can start working as well. And so I usually get in a little bit early because I can do that because it takes, a couple hours. And then once that all gets done, I usually have about 18 meetings for the rest of the day. And then I talk to the people who take a lot of the different IP level blocks that we work on, who build the full core, the full CPU. And we have meetings and how to integrate all these blocks together and all that stuff. And that's usually my day.
That's cool. And we've got a few questions coming in, just kind of along the same, like a similar theme of like, give us kind of a classroom 101. What are the types of engineers, and how do these pieces fit together when you think about the different types of engineers, um, and engineering technicians and different focuses and that type of thing? Can you kind of give us a little bit of just an overview?
I could speak on my end of things. So you have the electrical engineers, which design the circuits. Then you have physical design engineers, which basically sync with the electrical engineers and then work with the people who actually physically make the mask. And they do a lot of the verification. They do make sure the clocks are right. There's no issues with, RV or anything crazy like that. And then you have the software engineers, which I'm kind of in between a PDE, a physical design engineer, and a DA is what we call them on our end. And I automate a lot of stuff as well. And so the software engineers help us automate a lot of the things in our tools. So some of the things we do is very repetitive, and doing that over and over again is not fun. And that's usually who I work with.
So I'm going to go a little bit different because I worked for a long time. I was an engineer in a marketing division. And so I will talk about, so we had, software engineers, which is what I'm categorized as. But then I also worked a lot with technical marketing engineers. So these are people who actually bridge the gap between marketing and engineering, and you actually, as a technical marketing, you will help set up demos or find proof points for why Intel products are great. And I don't actually do that myself, but because I'm more focused on analysis of performance. But the technical marketing engineering is something that I think a lot of people don't think about. It's like if you're sort of interested in marketing, but you don't want to go all the way full bore, that's another interesting path.
I guess in my team we have pretty diverse crowd. We have well, basically all these machine learning things are math that you code. So we do have a lot of math majors. We have a lot of people that used to work for some of the different labs we have in the US where they do a lot of these, big workloads, people that specialize in high performance computing, that's myself included. So yeah, we like to have folks that have a background in both hardware and software. So hardware, you need to get performance out of your software, you need to know how to exploit it from the hardware. So we have a lot of folks that have a kind of like hardware background. Yeah.
So what's been one of the biggest challenges that each of you have faced in your career? Maybe it's a learning challenge. It really kind of anything that has come up where you've had to work really hard to overcome that. Would you be willing to share a little bit about those?
I can. It will be a little omitted.
Okay.
uh, so I got thrown on to a project midway, which was already behind by, I don't know, probably 2 quarters. And me and 2 other people who moved over to help that team had to, we had to engineer our way out of a hole, and we had to figure out how to basically become project managers, which we weren't at that point, and figure out how to move the project forward and still meet schedule. And we did. We actually finished a month early.
And I'm guessing that was
That's
not a part of your engineering education.
correct. Yeah, I mean, we had to learn on the
Yeah.
fly, and we had to, do new things, basically.
I guess I'm gonna be a little more vague, but I'm gonna say just overall over time is learning how to say no to things, because there and not just like just it's more nuanced than just being like no, I'm not gonna do that, but understanding why somebody is asking you for something and then being able to either offer them a different path than what they're asking, or just explaining to them like, oh, that's not going to help you, or I just don't have time for that, because it's just too big of a time sink. That was something that I think I had to learn over many years, how to really effectively tell somebody no.
I guess that for me, one of the challenges that I faced when I joined this team was just the technical path. I had never worked with such a big project. I had never worked with such complicated code. So that was pretty tough. Obviously, in a space like machine learning, it's even more complicated. So just learning to look at all these codes and understand it, and then ask for help. So when you don't understand something, you can either spend 3 days just staring at the screen, hoping some idea or divine power will help you. But no, it's more efficient to just ask for help. Knowing your limits is, I think it makes a big difference when you're an engineer, especially if you're starting on something new. You definitely have to ask for help.
Yeah, that's very interesting, and we talked a little bit about in our prep about kind of the end of project life cycle and how stressful things can get, and how that can sometimes present some unique challenges in trying to meet deadlines and those types of things. What are some of the lessons you've learned that have helped you be successful in meeting deadlines and kind of overcoming the potential craziness at the end of a project?
Learning how to say no. That's that. I've dealt with a lot of crazy, stressful deadlines, and that's probably why I brought that up. Is that was one of the most useful things that I've learned is like when and how to say no to things.
So in our development pipeline, that's what we call it. We have two deadlines: a soft deadline and a hard deadline. That's when we freeze our code and ship it, or our code is open source, so it's on GitHub. So when we kind of take a picture and put it on GitHub, and it's available for everyone. So delivering features is usually not a big deal. It's something that you work on across maybe a month timeline. So that's fine. What comes after that is the issue. Is after you've submitted your code, you run all the tests and all the quality stuff, and then you realize that it's just broken everywhere, and you've basically destroyed your library. It has a bunch of errors everywhere. So then you have to fix them as soon as you can. So I guess that's the interesting part. That's when you have days that you stay until 2 a.m. trying to find a bug, fix it. It's a bit of a fix. So that's the interesting part.
I'm definitely going to go with Regina on this one. It's how to say no, 100%. But the funny thing about that is the floor I work on hasn't been, redesigned. So it's the 1990s, and it has the big 1990 poster. Not every AR needs to be taken poster. that made me remind me of that.
That's awesome. We've got a few puns that have come in, asking if you guys are unrailed, and a couple questions about different types of softwares you use, if you use Linux. For those that are watching that are a little more technically oriented, talk a little bit about the types of tools that you guys use on a daily basis.
Yep. Okay, I guess I can go. The design of most of the CPUs is done in a Linux or Unix type environment. We use a lot of different tools. Most of them I can't probably say, so I'm not going to because I don't know. A lot of them are internal, some of them are external. But we've been moving to pretty much the latest of everything, and we're pushing those companies or our own company to push the limits of those tools, and we try to innovate as much as possible because we are pushing basically physics at this point with what we're doing.
So as part of my role, I do build a lot of PCs. So we've set up like I think I've learned how to put together a PC very, very fast. So it's I use the typical tools that you would use to put together a PC, but then also we do everything on like a test bench so that it's a lot easier to swap parts. So that's like a basic thing, and then I use a lot of really basic tools like I don't know, Excel, PowerPoint. I have to use all the time because I'm usually trying to convince somebody of something. Um, some I guess other tools. I haven't done much of this, but yeah, we have some like CPU simulation emulation software. So that's something that we'll use periodically. I use a lot of debugging tools. So software wise, I look at CPU-Z. That's an external one. Hardware info. Just getting down to the root of a lot of what's going on under the hood on any system. Boy, I'm forgetting other things, but yeah, there's a ton of stuff out there. And then I run a lot of different benchmarking software, a lot. So I'm not even going to go through all of them, but yes, I've done. If it has the ability to benchmark a CPU, I've probably touched it before.
I guess I have to have a Windows PC because that's the one they give us at work. But I basically just use it for email, or if I need to do something on Excel or PowerPoint. But I basically just turn it on, and as soon as it's on, I log into my Linux server. So we do a lot of testing and benchmarkings on workloads that need to have these big machines, data center machines that run machine learning stuff. So I just connect to those and develop through terminal. I use PuTTY on Windows, and that's enough for me because it's mostly text. I code, so I use Vim. I'm a Vim guy, and I have all my screens. I have 3 screens full of terminal sessions, and I'm very comfortable there. I love working like that, so that's just me. We code in C and C++, so I use JDB for debugging. We have to support different compilers, so I have all my tools that test stuff on different compilers. We do a lot of automation on those things, so that's pretty fun. We get to work on a lot of Linux stuff, OS stuff for Linux. So like I said, we do a lot of debugging. We also have to run our stuff on the latest CPUs that are still under development. So we use a lot of simulation tools to run like new benchmarks that might come out or new instructions. That's a really fun thing to do when you're coding something that hasn't come out, like exciting new instructions that Intel CPUs will have. So yeah, we use a lot of simulation software as well.
Are there any other kind of perks to the job as an engineer? Like, do you get cool toys to play with, or like, is there anything that you get to geek out over within your job?
I would say when we're getting a new system, like the latest CPU that comes on that we're gonna sell eventually to the public. We get to work with them, we get to test them, and we get to run all these new things. Something that was running maybe on the previous CPU version, it was running in 10 seconds, now it's running in 1 second. So that's really exciting. We get to see this new powerful thing that we're going to sell to our customers, and that's really cool. We get to be involved in the process.
Yeah. I mean, when I was more in the benchmarking team, we did all of the collected all the data that was going to be used externally for our launches. So yes, I got to play with everything new, like anytime. Getting to see like laptops before they're out in the market, like that's always fun. And I'm working on graphics stuff now, so I get to play a little bit with the graphics things before they go out. So yeah, I don't know. It's just like we're always working on something that's not released yet, and I just think that that's fun.
I personally don't. Yeah. Most of the stuff that we work on is so far ahead that we only see it once it, they send out the announcements that, hey, it's starting to hit the market type of thing.
Are there any skills that that each of you have realized at this point that it's a skill that you needed, but you did not necessarily realize that until you became an engineer and found that you needed it?
Project management. 100%.
I would say communication. Sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
Okay, I would say communication. You need to know how to deliver a message to other people and be sure that they're understanding what you're trying to say. Patience with yourself. You have to know your limits. Like it's been mentioned before. Say no. Don't overcommit. That's just not going to work out for you. That's not going to work out for your manager. So yeah.
Yeah, I thought so. I've actually always been good at project management and communication, but I think the thing that I didn't realize was that I was going to need statistics, right? And now that machine learning is a big thing, right? I've been actually trying to learn about it, and boy, that's a different kind of math that I'm not good at. So I wish I had paid more attention to that in school.
So one of the things we talked about a little bit in our prep is kind of alternative learning. And a couple things were mentioned from you guys that I would love for you to bring up and discuss a little bit together about pursuing your own areas of interest and passion and pursuing knowledge that way, and how that can have benefit for your career path.
Well, I guess I'll just, because this is a good segue, right? I machine learning wasn't really like that big when I was in school, and I don't even know if they called it that back then. They were just, we had like classes in data mining, right? But now it's like a big thing. I am actually taking classes, or I signed up for a class. I took half of it and then I got distracted on Coursera about machine learning, because I really want to know more, because I think the stuff that it produces is so fascinating that I want to learn how to do it. Or at least how it works. Because if you see any of like the demos of deep learning and what comes out of that, it's amazing. It's like magic, and I now want to learn more about that. So that's something I'm doing right now.
Well, I would say that, so I usually don't have time to do a lot of work-related learning. So I really like to read about senior people, senior engineers that are in the same space that I work in. A lot of them write blogs about just learning experiences. They dive really into like details and technical details that for me is really interesting. The curiosity that these engineers have about things and learning is really cool. So that's the things I like to learn about. Anything is helpful in your career. Any learning opportunity will help, if it's even unrelated or you think it's unrelated, like you're practicing with Toastmasters on how to speak in public. That is really good. That's a really good opportunity to learn, because you're always going to talk to people. You're always going to have to present to managers, upper level people that are going to drive decisions. You need to learn how to persuade them in your direction. So anything helps. And if you have time for that, that's great.
I'm definitely going to echo the classes. There's countless classes I've taken for countless obscure software languages that I've never learned in school that I had to pick up for Intel. But I guess another thing would be just, simple projects that you think would be interesting to you. So like, let's say you're a computer science person and you're like, oh, I have this problem and I want to figure out how to fix it, or I have this app idea or something like that. Just sit down and, spend a weekend on it and see what happens, see what comes from it, see where your pain points are, and then see where you excel, and then, focus on the pain points and see if you can actually get it to succeed.
So we have about 10 minutes left. If anyone watching has additional questions, please make sure you go ahead and you can list them in the chat here on stream. That's where we're sort of keeping our queue, and we've got a bunch of others that are coming in through our LANFest Colorado Discord server as well. But one of the questions that just came in, let's see here. Do you have any engineering heroes? So you guys were just kind of talking about learning from mentors and things like that. But within this profession, are there just these iconic engineering gods that you just have you hope one day you could be like them? Do those type of things exist within the engineering world?
So I don't know if he qualifies as an engineer, but he's a famous physicist, Richard Feynman. I've read his books. I like how, well, his perspective towards science and physics was just curiosity and just, have fun. He actually mentions in one of his books that he kind of felt, away from, like, he didn't feel himself. And it was because he lost curiosity about his work. He lost passion. So he eventually got it back. And he's like, you know what? I'm enjoying my work again because I'm curious about it now. I'm interested in doing these things. So he's someone that I really looked up to when I was studying.
Boy, I don't because I don't know. I look at I have like mentors at work that I look up to that I'm not going to name because they're, I guess, just regular people. And that's it, right? They're just regular people. They're a couple of years ahead of me or some years ahead of me in their careers, and I look up to them because it feels very tangible. Like I can get to where they are, and I don't think that's just my personality. I want something that I think I can actually feel like I can reach. So I'm not looking for somebody who kind of has gone down a different path than maybe what I've done.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna follow Regina on this one. It is a couple people I work with because they've been working for Intel for I think 30 years now, so they have a wealth of knowledge that I'm just they're passing down to me, which I think helps both the company and me continue my career.
Is there any kind of formal setup for mentoring relationships within Intel?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I forget the name of a program, but there is actually a program that actually specifically you can meet with people and become a mentor or mentee.
I think it's called a Plan a Mentor.
No, yeah, the program I'm in is it's called a mentoring circle. So it's actually, there's a mentor with a bunch of mentees, and we meet once a month to talk about like mentoring type topics. And so I signed up for this mentor circle program, and it's great. We've got people. I have my two mentors in my circle. One of them worked for Intel for like 30 years, and then the other one actually has only been in Intel for a couple of years, but he spent time at NVIDIA and at Google. So I get two very good perspectives, one from a longtime Intel employee and one from somebody who's kind of bounced around a bit.
I think it's really nice that at Intel, there's an expectation from senior people that they have to mentor people. So, and it's not just a checklist thing. It's something that they want to do because they know that it's something that helps the company and helps. If they're in your team, it helps the team as well. If you're more efficient and a better engineer, then that's just better for everyone.
Yeah, it's part of as you progress in your engineering career, you have to be able to demonstrate that you've spent time mentoring others in order for you to continue to go up the ladder. Because of what Manuel said, right? It's really about making sure that you don't leave the others behind and that you lift everybody with you.
Okay, so I've got a question here, and let me roll up to the original question because I think it was worded a little bit better. Um, but they want to know if any of you have worn the bunny suits in the commercials, and if you have, what was that like?
So on my campus, we have the Intel Museum where you can put on a bunny suit just to try it. And so I did that, I think, once there. But that's something that like anybody can, if you come to the Intel Santa Clara campus, you can go do it. I think I have worn a bunny suit one other time, and it was not at Intel. I think it was at school. To we in when I was in school, we did a project where we made a solar panel, and like they put us in the fab for like a couple days. So that's when I wore a bunny suit. It's not comfortable.
I've never worn one, but I have friends that work in the fab, and I mean it's I think it takes like 30 minutes for them to actually go through the whole process before they're able to go into one of the clean rooms. So for them, obviously, it's not enjoyable. It's kind of like it's like, oh, I have to start my day, spend 30 minutes through the whole cleaning process and putting on this clean suit. So I have never put it on though. I don't think I want to live that experience.
I also have not put it on, and I definitely don't want to live that experience.
I feel like this is a good life goal for for both you, Manny, and Chris, since Regina's done it.
Well, I mean, I put it on the one at the museum, which is like it's not a 30-minute process. You can just kind of get an idea of what it's like, and that thing is dirty. I think at this point,
I think we know what
right?
our next I think we know what our next Intel engineer stream should be. Like we should just follow you guys as you go into the fab and get to put on the bunny suits. I think that would be fantastic. Um, all right, so probably a couple questions left here. Let's see. We have a very long list of questions, so I'm trying to pick some good ones for you guys. Um, all right, so if you're able bunny suit up race, I like that idea. Target GLB, that would be fantastic. Um, if you're able to share, maybe from a past project, what are some highlights from your career so far of just projects that you were very proud of? Um, assuming you can tell us about that.
I can go ahead and start. I've been working at Intel for 8 years now, and none of the stuff that I've worked on yet has came out, so I can't talk about anything.
Wow, so you actually are in projects that are literally spanning almost a decade.
No, that's just how far advanced that I do things. The process of what we do is the building blocks for the actual core. So
Okay.
we're years ahead of the core, basically, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does. That's pretty neat.
Yeah.
I guess for me, well, our project is not a project per se. It's just we just have a never-ending, development of this library. Cool things that I've worked on though are when we get, I can't mention my customers, but we get really big customers that are interested in workloads that need to be optimized from some machine learning stuff, and I get to work on those features. I get to optimize code. That's the I guess that's what's fun about my job is I work a lot in assembly. That's how we get most of the performance. So just coding these big algorithms in assembly code is for me it's fun. And then when you see it running, when you see customers being very happy that you got something that was running in maybe a couple of weeks is now running in a day. That's how long it takes for these things to run. Is really cool. It's neat that you're able to be part of that.
Okay, well, see, I'm the old part here. So I've been at Intel for like 17 years. So my favorite project was when we launched Core 2 Duo. That was back in 2006, 2005, 2006. So I got to fly out to Israel to go be one of the first people to test it. So that was really awesome. I think I was the first person to run a game on it. And I think at the time that was like, I think I ran Doom 3, and I got to see how much better it was at running Doom 3, and it was like amazing. I kind of didn't believe the number the first time I saw it, so then I had to check everything, run it like 10 more times, and I was like, oh boy, this is like they weren't kidding. This is like way better than our last generation. So that was one of my favorites. And then more recently, I actually worked on the Nook that we had, which included both Intel CPU and AMD GPU on one package. That was called Kaby Lake G, and that one was really fun too, because it was this weird, like, we have to work with somebody that's like a partner but also a competitor. So it was just this like weird tense thing, but it was interesting and I learned a lot.
No, that's awesome. So we got a couple minutes left. Do you have uh, any final kind of words of wisdom or encouragement maybe to the people that are here that are just asking themselves the question, do I want to be an engineer one day, and is it really worth it for all the math?
100%. Go
I
ahead,
mean, I
Lee.
think it's worth it. I actually feel like these days engineering is kind of democratized, right? It's like if you have a computer, you can start coding. There's a lot of resources out there to start learning. You can give it a try and see if you like it. And if you don't really like it that much, then maybe it's not for you. But if you love it, then yeah, definitely pursue engineering. It'll just get more interesting from there.
Yeah, and there's also a lot of different niches of engineering. So, maybe you don't like coding, but there could be, electrical engineering. There's, every other branch of engineering that you could think of, there is. And I mean, my advice is just do it. Like the Shia LaBeouf, just do it.
I think when you're an engineer, you're part of the people that are building the future, the technology future. You have a chance to influence almost anything in everyone's lives. You can be in the medical sector, you can be in the automotive or transportation industry, and I think it's really neat. You get to build planes, you get to build spaceships, computers that are running all these algorithms and all these services that people rely on, the power grid. I think it's just great how we've been able to build this society intertwined with all this technology. So you get to be part of that.
Yeah, and I'll say one last thing about the math, right? It doesn't, like, when we do math in school, it feels very like tedious and it's like, why am I doing this? But when you start doing it for a reason, like in engineering, like it's not work anymore, right? It's like you're using it as a tool, I think, as we mentioned, and you use it as a tool to see the results you want to see, and so you're a lot more excited to do it.
That's great. So thank you guys so much for joining us. It's been fantastic picking your brains and just getting to know each of you guys. For those of you watching, go ahead and hang tight. We'll actually be back after a short break for the National Fallen Firefighters panel.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you
Yeah,
for
thanks for
having
having
me.
us.
And we're out. All right. Good job.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
weekend. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah,
That was fun.
Yeah.
that was fun. And
No, it was cool.
now I'm sitting here thinking, like, boy, I should probably talk to Manny more about what he's doing, because
Yeah,
I
I was
mean,
gonna say, you're like, you literally
don't
want to
think you
learn
wanna-
what he does.
Yeah, I don't think you want to look at my stuff.